It's my pleasure to introduce today's host, Laura Nanny, a local performance artist who performed in the, she was reminding me, 2004 7A11D International Festival of Performance Arts, so it's been a while. Thank you, Laura, for agreeing to do this and for agreeing to take on such a challenging day when we have so much interpretation going on. So welcome.
Thank you, Paul. And thank you to the 7A11D Collective for organizing an event like this, because it's such a privilege to be able to talk to so many interesting artists about their work. And I just want to say that I'd like us to be able to have a conversation as much as possible. So I encourage people as we're talking along to ask questions, and that goes for the artists as well. Feel free to ask questions of each other. Who I have with me, you may have seen Jürgen Fritz perform last evening, and Kiori Haba, from Germany, visiting us from Germany, Kiori Haba from Japan, and visiting us from Edmonton, Alberta, Jolanta Lapiak. Thank you so much for being here with us. I'm just going to ask you to start by briefly introducing yourself and your practice. Jolanta?
Me first?
Yes.
Oh, okay. All right then, I am Jolanta Lapiak. And I have a sign language name, which is translated as Red Cheek. I moved to Canada when I was 9 years old. From Europe, I moved when I was 9 years old, and I've been here ever since. Of course, the sign language system has a way of developing names that are similar to the way Native Americans or Native Canadians develop their names by characteristic. And so having Red Cheek, that's my sign name. I do visual art, media, and always include language issues in my art.
Great. Kiori?
Thank you. And, I'm not good at English, so I asked organizer to interpret. And hello, Kaori Haba from Japan. I live in Nagano Prefecture, Matsumoto City. And I moved to Matsumoto City 4 years ago, and I stayed in Nagano Prefecture, Nagano City, Nagano. We use two name, capital city name and prefecture name. And Nagano City, I lived in more than 20 years ago. 20 years. And before that, I born in the Hokkaido Island, the North Island in Japan Islands, and 35 years there. And I think my background is too long. So okay.
She said I just give up.
Okay.
Move on.
I'm Jürgen Fritz. I'm coming from Germany, and I make a long tour. I started with music. It was in the 80s, doing very normal jazz music on the saxophone. I was young, good looking. For me, it's interesting that I started with saxophone because I just make a curve. I just then, after practice of long years, I tried the first time to bring saxophone to performance art, and it was one of my most terrible performances I did ever. Still, I try to do it, but I think it gives an impression for me that an image can be so strong. That means the man playing saxophone, that you can't transfer it to performance. I couldn't, not at all, So even this is my longest practice. I couldn't make performance out of it. Okay, so it was music coming to theater, I was playing as an actor and then going to performance art, starting actually really with a group performance, Black Market, this all stuff. It was in the 85 and now, since now, going on with that. Also, sometimes directing theater, but not so much.
You just mentioned a lot of things that I'd like to ask about. One of them is the process of building the image, because in seeing your performance last night, which was very musical, I'm wondering if you could speak to that, like the process of creating an image over time in a performance. Is that something that like do you begin with a simple image, or are you working towards the end of a, like, do you see it as a composition of a creation of an image?
No. I think I started to be interested in the last years in the pure physical aspect of performance art. So I don't tell any stories, and I strongly go from to look at performance art as a form of fine art. This is very important for me. Mm-hmm. So it's because it have a big effect on how you look at yourself as an artist and how you expect the audience to look at you. It's a different. So it's not narrative. And what I try to find the performative image when you like viewing the performance. So it's pure physical, very simple. So I try to start with simple setting and go into the action. And during this action, I try to touch something. And so it was I was very happy to cooperate with Gabe because he's a fantastic musician.
Yeah.
And also very strict, very strict. He's doing his job, I doing mine. It's as simple as that. And then we are looking, okay, how can we come together? Mm-hmm. And so this situation must develop during performance. Because
like in the moment.
In the moment, I just the first time I saw him was yesterday at 2:00. So we didn't know what will happen.
Mm-hmm. What were the parameters you were starting with?
Very very simple. He's sitting there. I'm standing here. Mm-hmm. I proposed him that we start from silence, and we end in silence. That's it. And I told him it's about 25 to 40 minutes because I think that was more or less given time of the situation.
Yeah. And you mentioned beginning with simple actions and also simple objects. Like you work with very simple objects. I'm wondering if Kiara, you can speak to that, because your piece also used. The piece that you did last night used very simple objects, everyday objects. If you can speak to the choice of some of the objects and materials you were working with.
Even in Japanese, I should use microphone.
You can speak in it, whatever you're comfortable with, and then Dice will interpret.
Okay. いつも私の作り方っていうの決まってるわけじゃないんですけど、昨日のことについてはなんかいくつかの気になるものがこうあって、素材がこういろいろ。それは目に見えるものだったりそうじゃないものだったり、それからなんていうかな、ここに来てから出会ったものだったり、来る前から気になっていることだったり、それからその日の朝見たものだったり、それを アクションの中でどうやってこう一つの作品にするかっていうのを最後の最後の瞬間まで考えてます。
Well, the way I approach my performance is not always the same. I found 1, 2, 3, 4 things for my performance yesterday, but then it did develop as it went by.
あ、そうだよね。だからそれがここで見つけたものだったりするか
And
ら。
I found some of them here in Toronto.
それが来る前だったり。
And I did research and found something to show in Japan as well.
それから日常常になんか考えてる例えば日本の私は松本っていうところにいるんだけど、その例えばニュースとか見てこう常に考えてる。
I live in Matsumoto City in Japan, and I always think about my performance, and I'm linking them to my performance.
それも一つのエレメント。
And that became my one of the elements for my performance as well.
それでその日パフォーマンスするというその瞬間まで見たものもやっぱりそれは取り入れる。
Until the starting time of my performance, everything I saw became a part of my performance.
でそれをどうやってこう一つのその作品としてこうアクションの中に取り入れるというのを本当にギリギリまで決まらない時があるんです。
So occasionally I don't decide what to include in my performance until the very, very beginning time of my performance.
そうだから1ヶ月前2ヶ月前にそのパフォーマンス何やるってオーガナイザーから聞かれるのが一番大変。
The hardest thing, challenge for me is that the organizers of performance festivals ask me 2 months prior to my performance what you're going to show.
What's interesting to me is how having seen your work, and I'm looking forward to seeing your work, Yolanta. But the importance you place on being in the moment and the authenticity of, and also leaving room open for an action to develop and an image to develop. Which I think you were speaking to the what is real and presence.
Yeah. I like to think about tools in
Yes.
performance art because it comes more from my teaching practice. Because I had very bad teacher, very bright, but they couldn't transform their ideas to the practice. So I was working, for example, on the idea of what is presence, what is awareness, how. And they told to me or not only to me, to all, it was a group, just be like the gods. or just be yourself. It's impossible to be yourself, Like one I remember very well, it was in Poland, and this time I was, and then one of the men, but tell me how I can be present. And then the teacher, and he was a good man, really intelligent, but bad teacher. He told, you have to be like the tiger in the jungle. And then the man go and afterwards, So in this moment I started to think, okay, what can be tools for a performance artist that he can enter the stage and work on these tools to get into the situation. So, for example, what I did yesterday, for me, one tool is just to listen. Because I strongly believe that to listen to the sounds install you very effectively to the situation. Because it connects you. This is the thing of real. What's real? Because the sound is real. So I like, for example, having these or children crying. So when I start with the bell, everything becomes music. you know?
Mm.
And it's here. I don't have to push the world outside. It's everything becomes part of the situation. And I think this is one tool, for example, to install yourself to the given situation. That's one approach of the idea of real or present or whatever.
Yolanta, for yourself, how do you work towards authenticity and realness? This is something that we touched upon yesterday when we were briefly talking.
Authenticity, yes. Live performance, obviously, language, and being live, the parallel with the performance, live conversations, interactions, and then looking at print, the experience, the authenticity of that live performance, and then having it videotaped. Do you lose the authenticity? How does space and time impact the authenticity of a piece? That's some of what I look at. I think it depends on the audience reaction as well, what the authenticity level sometimes might be. If I think about key points as I'm imagining a piece, I have maybe an objective, or I have an anticipated result, and I might take a certain route to get there. But again, depending on the reaction and how I'm feeling the responses, I might find that I take a different route than I might have anticipated, based on sticking to my plan might not be as authentic. So it's you still arrive at the point ultimately, but the route is very much inspired by the environment.
Mm-hmm. Okay, Ori, do you want to speak to that as well? It's a tough question.
もう一回、何質問をちょっと
Can you repeat the question again?
Yeah, just the aspect of working towards an aspect of realness or authenticity in performance, and is that something that she thinks about, and if so, borrowing from Jorgen, what are some of the tools that she uses?
パフォーマンスでは現実のものとして表現するときに、ユーゲンさんが言ったみたいに音とかそういうものが現実になってくるだったら、神さんの場合はパフォーマンスの中でどういうふうにそういったことを体験していますか？
多分ね、あんまり話の流れが分かってないかもしれないね。だからトンチンカンになっちゃうかもしれないんだけど、現実に自分のその周りにあるものがどんな風にあるのか。
そういうことですか。So I'm not too sure if I'm following the conversation, but whatever I have in my performance piece, how does it communicate through my performance? Is that a question, or what do you mean by authenticity?
I guess, sorry, this comes from the question of what is real, what is performed, like how. And being in a moment, like an authentic also relationship with an audience, not necessarily forcing a particular. I think where I see it potentially having seen your performance is that you're responding to what is happening in the moment, whether it be with the material or the reaction that an audience is giving you, rather than working towards a predetermined
Okay.
Does the audience understand what I'm asking? I just want to make I want to make sure that I'm not completely obtuse.
Okay.
Yeah.
多分私に、とってはそのなんていうかな、おそらくね、その架空の世界ではないんですよ。
Performance is not a superficial thing for me.
メタファーであるかもしれない。何か私の行為だとか、
Maybe a metaphor of my act.
あるいは小道具、その時使ったマテリアルは何かのメタファーであることはありますけれども。
The materials, the objects I use in my performance could be a metaphor of something that I would like to communicate.
だけど、
However,
例えば観客にとってそれがすごくなんていうのかな、メタファーじゃなくて本当の現実的に自分のそのなんていうかな、すごくファミリアですごく今朝食べたリンゴだとかっていうことであればそれはそれで OK。
for the audience, if the apple they just ate in the morning is real to them, that's fine with me too.
で私はだから全然その分からないものはあんまり使わない。
I don't use any objects that audience have no ideas about.
で、そのだからリアルがその世界今のところとそれからちょっと私が考えてるそのまあなんていうかな現実の世界とちょっと今あるところとちょっと離れたものをこうミックスじゃないな、つないじゃう感じ。
I try to connect the present moment at the performance, or where she is right now. I would like to connect something in the past or other time, and connect them and mix them.
そうでそれはどうしてかというと、私がオーディエンスであるときか、オーディエンスであるときにパフォーマンスアートを見てて何が面白いかというと、自分の今その
When I'm an audience,
アーティストが何か表現するときに何かふっとつながる瞬間っていうのがすごく面白い。
when I'm an audience at the performance art, I find it quite interested when the performer and audience get connected in one instance. At that moment, that instant, I find it quite interested.
多分私がパフォーマンスアートの作品を作るときもなんかそんな面白い瞬間を作りたいなっていう、そういう気持ちはあります。
So when I create a performance art piece, I would like to create a moment with the audience.
An experience with them. That's true.
で、それを経験してほしいっていうことですよね。
まあそれがなんていうかパフォーマンスアートを好きになる、私がオーディエンスであるときにパフォーマンスがこうどうして好きかっていうと、他のジャンルよりも、好きなのはそういう瞬間があるから好き。
So as an audience, I like performance art because there's a moment that audience and performer can get connected and things become real.
Yeah. Yeah. Whoa. 1, 2. His shirt's louder.
I'd like
I'm gonna
to-
go with Paul.
I'd like to add.
The man is beautiful.
Can I add
Sure.
as well?
Yeah.
I just want to also add that it's not also the audience only. Sometimes the audience all become performers. You know, in the authentic moment that we are performing together, it is an authentic interactive act. You know, so it's not me performing to them, but it is us in an exchange of ideas.
Okay, so for me, I think of doing a performance as a kind of research.
Yeah.
But Kiori talked earlier about the research she does before the performance. So I'm very curious from all of the artists actually to find out what constitutes research toward making a performance. What do you think of as the research that you're doing to make a piece?
Well,
Versus the piece,
Well,
just not a versus, but yes. What's the research?
How do you
Yeah.
research a performance you're going to do?
Maybe.
How or
Yolanta?
Yes.
meaning why?
What constitutes it? What is your research?
例えば for example?
Sure. Give an example.
いいかな、なんていうかな、例えば
For example,
不必要な誤解は避けたいというのがまず一つ。
I don't want to have any unneeded misunderstandings.
だから明らかな間違い、私の知識の間違いは表現したくないですね。
I don't want to express my misunderstanding in my performance.
でそれは時々すごく今のこうなんていう複雑なこう社会状況とか複雑な政治状況で時々ちょっとすごくデリケートなことだったり
At the
する。
present social and political situations in present time, my interpretation could be misinterpreted.
そうで例えばね、
For example,
そこから政治的に話はしたくないんだけど、
I don't want to talk about politics right now, but
例えばイラク戦争にカナダが参加したかしないかとか。
if Canada participated in Iraqi war or not,
So it was a really big point だけど、私は
it's a big issue.
なんていうかな、日常的なニュースの時にそれはもうその時は知ってたかもしれないけど、今では忘れていたかもしれない。ごめんね。
So at the time, I knew what was going on, but right now, I might have forgotten.
そういうことがあって、例えば戦争っていうものを扱った時に私がなんていうかな、カナダでパフォーマンスをするっていう時にテーマが戦争だったりした時に、イラクに関してみんながどう思うかっていうので知識、自分の記憶がもし間違ってると全然間違ったメッセージを伝えてしまうことがある。
So when I deal with war in my performance in Canada, if I use the Iraqi war with unclear memories, then the message I'm going to express can be wrong.
そういう時はリサーチがやっぱり必要、あるいはリサ
Then I
ーチが
will need to research.
できない時はそれをやらない。
Then when I don't have enough resources, I don't do that kind of performance.
そういうことは、
That happens.
I think as far as research, I think it takes a lot of different forms. One, as was recently mentioned, looking at the issue of war, but I think it's also it's thoughtful, right? It's cognitive, and I think about several years ago in Thailand, I was invited to do an international piece there, and so I spent a lot of time thinking. It was more a thinking process for me. I lived in Japan for a brief time, and I had to. There was another girl who had very long hair and braids. For many years, she had been growing her hair for Locks of Love at that time, that organization, and she was going to cut her hair, and instead of her doing that at her home, I asked her if she would participate in my piece, because I thought that it would be very sort of relevant in the thinking I had done around preparing for this work, and then a situation kind of presented itself which could transform or be something that visually would be very striking. And so then her hair being cut during the actual live moment of, again, that authentic moment. But I think that that the research takes a lot of different forms, and sometimes it's just waiting for a moment, and sometimes it's just very about the thinking process.
Yeah. I'm afraid I don't make any research. I don't. What I'm doing, I feel that I'm researching when I'm looking performances. Because for me, when I'm looking to other performances, I think this is the most research I do. Because for me, for example, it's the same, looking and doing. When I look, I can follow the person. Because for me, a performance art is to show the person. And the person is in the center of the performance art, and all materials serve to show the person.
When you say the person, you mean yourself?
The artist. The artist is the center of performance art, and he must be enough, in my approach. It's not the only one, but in this. So when I look at performance, it's my research, where she or he is going to, how she or he is making, what is successful, what is not successful. For me, the same. Successful, not successful. For me, it's interesting how it served to install the person. This is my research, And for example, a very interesting discussion yesterday after the performance, because a woman saw that our performance with Gabe was something have to do a lot of with this colonialization of with First Nation and white Canadians. Of course, I was aware of that this could be, you know, but I couldn't find this during the performance with Gabe, you know, because it could have been. I was open that this could happen as a possibility, but for me it doesn't. It was this musical, physical image, whatever, but not this theme of colonization. He was not interested in that. When we had this point, you know, so I didn't try to express, or I never tried to express. If there is something like this, I will look during performance. Does it happen? Does it install this theme during? You know, can I find it? Will it appear? Yes or no? I will never go and try to express like yesterday. I do a performance about colonialization with white American and Native Indian. You know, it could have happened. So I would have glad to solve and find an image for that. Of course, but I'm aware it is a possibility to read this performance. Maybe not answer your question.
No, but not answering it is also.
I want to connect with what you said before, that you are going to this moment to connect with the audience. Maybe you can remember the first time what performance brought you into performance. It's always interesting to hear what. Do you still remember what performance you saw that said, "Oh shit, what is this?" I'm interested. Can you?
I know very well, you know, because I really loved this idea to just work to connect with the situation. So because before in theater, I have to play roles, and I love it, you know, to be the dying father. I was a very good dying father, going to the light, you know. So I know. This is a light, and it was a very good piece, and I was making this, I was thinking of my father who had died some years ago, you know, and this Strasbourg method, you know, that you can bring up the feelings through connecting with your own past, you know, and I liked it very much, you know. But then we changed, coming to this more experimental thing, and I thought, oh yes, how I can come, and I have the most intimate situation with other persons, not touching, just being there. I'm working, for example, on body impression. This is what I said, it's the ear, and it's the idea of how do a situation impress on my body physically. Do she have an impression of me? Yes or no? This is so this helps me so strongly to connect to another person. Where? And this makes me happy, you know? This makes me going on, and much more stronger than to playing the dying father, you know?
It's more immediate.
What performance it was?
Yes, it was this work on this idea of awareness. You know, coming from this Japanese, in this time very famous was a Buto dance. You know, and of course we were working on this Zen philosophy of approach to. No, I never did but it's a question of awareness. This is the basic question, to be aware. What does it mean, you know? And we were working a lot on that, and this really gave me such a new quality than I had before.
Can I ask what you actually mean by awareness? Because I'm just finding sort of a slight contradiction in what you were saying
Yes.
previously. I mean, you're talking about the performance and the toolkit of the performance,
Yeah.
and the body as a tool to communicate or to express or to raise a level of awareness, and then also that level of connection as well. And then you made the example from last night that you had a conversation afterwards where somebody was speaking to you about the concept of colonization, which wasn't your starting point within your performance. But a reading of your performance that probably would be very, very difficult to ignore or deny is that question around some sort of colonization or dominance of voice or dominance of sound. But where for you then does that level of awareness within the moment of the performance start to happen? Where in the act of the repeating your action again and again and again and again and that sound, that you are actually creating a certain level of awareness or consciousness that is being communicated on that level? Or do you deny that?
No, you know, but it's not my approach to express anything, you know. I don't express. I don't, for me, performance is a process of finding. So it's a very simple setting, and like I said, and then I start with the physics, and with the setting. You know I have to do this. I love starting with hearing, pure physical.
So what did you find the last night then? What was
what to find. I try to touch. You know, can I touch something? Can I coming to this high physical whatever, then I think there is some kind of a communication with the situation, what part is gave the audience, what I found. I don't know what I found. I tried to, you know. The performance is to try to touch, to come to a point, not to express. No.
But that sense of touch then is purely individualistic, rooted so much in your consciousness then it doesn't matter if you're going to be touching other.
No, I'm not interested to touch others. I'm not interested to tell anything. Because I told in my approach to performance art, performance serves to show the person. The person of the artist is the center of the performance. And I'm as an audience. For me, it's the same. I can see how the person will erscheinen. We have this philosophy of erscheinen. Appear. We have a full philosophy about appearance. You know, how a person, a situation appear, and it's also a question of art, appearance. And this, in fact, I'm interested in.
I wonder if the experience for us on the outside was very much like it was about the sound. It was about the juxtaposition of the two performers, as well as and the visual image that was being created. And you had your eyes closed for I think all the way through. I mean, there were no. But I wondered if that was conscious to keep yourself separate from whatever else was visually happening, or are you? Do you know what I mean? Because you said something really provocative when we were speaking earlier about that there is no collaboration. That they're separate.
Yeah. I strongly don't believe in collaborative work. Even it may be strange because I'm working with such a lot of people since 20 years. I'm married with them, with black market people. But for me, it's all the time only existing solo work. I don't start to collaborate with anybody. But You know, it's only my approach. When I will work with Paul, I will do my stuff, he will do his shit in the same situation.
Yeah.
And we will meet, you know? We will meet. I will be aware of what he's doing, how it will change the situation, how. But all the same thing with the audience. The audience is there, having influence, strong influence on the situation. So this is because I don't know what we can do together. How the images and his personality and mine will meet, I don't know. But I can find it through the action. You know, this is what I'm interested in. So I can't go to him and tell, okay, collaborate. So
Yeah.
it's not interesting me, but I would be interested to share the space. He's starting there, I'm starting here. He can do his, I do mine. What I say to Gabe, do your job, I do mine, and then we will see what will happen. That's all.
And that discovery happens in front of the audience.
Yeah,
Yeah.
audience is the same part of the situation
Yeah.
as Gabe, you know, because whatever the part of attention, of the presence of the audience, I take it, and then when I close the eyes, because for me sometimes hearing is much more intimate than looking. You know, I can much more come to the situation with hearing or working on this body impression than to fix on the eyes. For me, it's too much rational, connected with the eyes. It's too much rational description. What is it? Sorry. Rational. So I'm much more interested in the irrational than, you know. So not in the meaning, what does it mean? I'm not interested, what does it mean? What is the potential? I'm much more interested in potential, you know. Sorry.
No, don't apologize. I want to allow the others to respond to the question about the first performance that led you into performance art, and also if you want to comment on any of the. I'm curious about your approach to collaboration and consideration of that as well, because that for me is a really strong statement, and I think particular to your approach. So. Yolanta?
Well, collaboration, I would speak to, I would say, I don't think about collaboration as being making a plan, putting something together, really being in an organized sense. I think it is just, again, sharing a space is collaborative, coming to some general concepts about how we're going to approach something. Even expecting the audience to be collaborative in that they have also shown up and they're there to participate to an extent within that piece. So again, I would speak to collaboration as being on a variety of levels, even though none of them are sort of that conscious, okay, let's get together, have a meeting, let's sit down and decide we're going to do A, B, and C, not that type of collaboration, but imagining that the collaboration exists in that we are all present and in that shared experience. You know, I'm sure the dictionary says something about working together to a common goal or something like that. I would disagree with that sort of as a definition. I think there's, again, the collaborative is a range, and it's not so much the traditional interpretation of it.
And in terms of first performance, seminal performance that you witnessed that led you to performance art, or change your point of view?
I would say not so much one specific. There was one that did hit me. There was what's the name of an old? It's a Polish. There was an old in the 80s. There was a famous Polish. Is it a P? Started the last name started with a P. A performing artist. It started with a P. No. Anyway, there was a Polish artist at an international theater piece I went to. It was older artists, and they were very active. And So there was a lot of busyness at the show, and there was this one performer who came up and did these very simple moves, very smooth, very fluid, very simple, no language, some visuals that were put up behind, and it was just so simple that it struck me as I felt very connected to it in the moment, that something important was happening. And I couldn't say more about it at the, but when I'm asked now to press, I think that one experience that comes to mind, it was just had a real sweetness to it that struck me and sort of moved me forward.
And Kaori?
でコラボレーションについてはユルゲンはね先生だからやっぱり言葉を多分定義して使う
About collaboration, because Jürgen is a teacher, he's good at defining words, collaboration.
で私は
But me,
なんていうかな美術の基礎的な勉強をしたところから来たわけじゃないので、
so I'm not formally trained as an artist.
そうだからコラボレーションっていうと本当に辞書の意味から考える。
So when I think about collaboration, like she said, I see the terminology from the dictionary.
っていう意味で言うと私は例えば自分のアクションの中でそのお客さんと何かやり取りするのももちろんコラボレーションだしアーティストと同じ時間を過ごすのもコラボレーションだし
For me, dealing with the audience is a collaboration, and doing something with other artists is collaboration as well.
それでだからその自分が与えられた時間とスペースの中に来た人たちとはコラボレーションだと思います。
So whenever I share the time and space, either with the audience or other artists, that's collaboration to me.
で大きく言ってしまえばもうだからポールが例えばこのフェスティバルをオーガナイジングしていてでそこに自分が参加してきてこの流れの中にいるということも大きく考えればコラボレーションになると思う。
Within the big picture, Paul invited me over to this festival, and we're trying to build this festival together. That's a collaboration to me as well.
Maybe I'm one element of this 7A and 11D, maybe. It's also collaboration for me. まあそういうことかな。それで、
Yeah, that's what I think.
あともう一つが一番最初のパフォーマンス、なんだろう。
You can come back to it if you want to. Yeah, you were eager to ask a question.
Yeah, no, I would like to bring you back to this question about awareness.
Yes.
Because I really appreciate it and I think it deserves special attention. Why do I believe it deserves special attention? Because we often use words in terms that we forget that we need to define them from time to time, or at least try to define them at a very basic level. Because people might come inside the room and would say, oh, these people are so aware about what they're doing, like, what's happening? Why am I not this way? So first, maybe you're right that there is a contradiction. I'm fine with contradictions, but I'll try to give you a possible way to resolve this contradiction. I'm not saying that this is what is relevant to Jürgen, but this is my perception from outside. I think when he's talking about awareness, and he used a really interesting metaphor, to listen, to follow the sounds, and to install yourself into the situation. I think it's a wonderful way to put it. I read it as a way to merge yourself phenomenologically into the situation. It's at a very perceptive level, which includes all your cognitive and emotional capacity. Plural. Another thing is whether we are aware only, because at the moment we are aware about something, we are also not aware about many other things that happen at the same time. So paying attention to the lack of awareness, I believe, is equally important. It's only fair to do so, because otherwise someone might say, she's so bright, she's aware about whatever she's doing. This is not the case. And most of the time, I find myself, especially after the fact, that I'm totally unaware, despite the fact that I have the sense that I'm really aware about my intentionality when I perform. So I follow my consciousness follows the subject. And I go through it and I concentrate, and this is what I suspect Jürgen was talking about. to be aware at a very subjective level. And I wouldn't engage with validity claim because it's a very subjective, but there is such awareness. But at the same time, we're not aware about all these interpretive possibilities that our work brings to the audience. And this is the most wonderful part when people come and say, Helge told me that someone went to them and suggested a brilliant interpretation of whatever he did. And he said, it's remarkable because it opens all these other possibilities for reading my own work. And suggests also lots of other possibilities for approaching your future process. So when I'm saying that, maybe I'll try to resolve this contradiction. One is to be aware, when you follow your intentionality at a subjective level, phenomenologically, as I said. And another is to be aware of all implications that every action does in the world, in everyone's mind when people are in the room. So I see basically no contradiction here. I mean, they happen together. But what I'm asking for is to be aware of this lack of awareness, because I find it very important. Because then we are open to all these possibilities that come from outside. People come and say, do you know that my reading was this and that? And you go, oh, I wasn't aware of this. But that's why we meet, that's why we're together. So I don't know if it's wonderful. Sometimes it feels wonderful to me, sometimes it feels horrible to me. But I think it's worth doing it. It's worth trying to meet each other, whatever it means. Thank you. Thank you for the question.
No, I mean, I don't have any conflict with what, in some respects, with what you're saying, or also with what you said as well in terms of a concept of the presentation of the self as an individual in that moment, and how you construct that, how we construct ourselves in that moment, and that level of awareness in a sense. And the beauty of the repeating of the action and the sound allows, in a sense, that to be revealed in the moment, or invoked, or called up, or arises in a sense. And I think that is what you were expressing to me when you said you were discussing that exploration of humanness in the moment. My question, though, to you was that in reducing your action to the simplicity of the bell going, you are working across then so many kind of layers of interpretation, which, it's our responsibility, our perception in a sense. But one of them that you did hit upon last night was that question probably for many people around colonialization, or a dominant voice hammering consistently upon another, and even then the resistance or survival of another voice within that. Okay? Now we're speaking on a human level. We are human. And even if we strip away our awareness to the most basic beats, in a sense, there is something that is still about communicating to another. And what do we want to say when we strip it down? That we're all writers, that we are all, it's just about me, it's just about me, it's just about me, it's just about me. This is my question. It's just like, what do we then say if we present ourselves on that level as a being, as the way we exist? And if we want to speak about awareness, colonialization, it's awareness that we want to evoke or call upon as being something that is uniquely human. My selfishness. Now we're taking it maybe away from exactly what you were intending with the performance, or not even intending, just discovering. But this is maybe where that question leads,
It's interesting for me to hear your passionate response to, like, I'm really trying to find out what the intended experience for you or meaning might be, but also in listening to you, I'm hearing that, that in your process and approach, it's very specific and simplistic and dedicated to to that, but being open to the understanding that that there are all those other layers that are going to be experienced.
No, I'm responding to how he spoke about his
Mhm.
work, about
Mhm.
questions of awareness, of perception, of intersubjectivity, of subjectivity. This is what you responded to my question.
Yeah.
So if we're going to take the conversation to that level, then let's take it to that level. And then what do we mean by those things? You know, what are we then saying if we're going to have a conversation about these aspects of our humanity?
Yeah, okay, I have to say, sorry, with respect to this particular work, my personal experience, I'm not saying about interpretation, there is a remarkable amount of care in the way he took us inside the situation and then he took us out. It shows the connection to the other people. For me, it's revealing. So I didn't know anything about him as an artist.
No, I mean,
But the way he did it,
Yeah.
with this very, very gently taking us inside, this is what is revealing with respect to the human quality of the artist for me. Because it's not like I'm hammered with something that happens, exotic, and then I don't know how to go out because it's so powerful and I feel lost and abandoned. There's this, okay, you know, it's the way it's very, very carefully constructed. It's like he would say, no, it's not. It's so, like, and I would agree, but I think, I'm sorry to defend, you know, in some stupid way. I'm sure people can do it for themselves, but my personal experience, I really felt welcomed into the piece, being there in a very powerful way, with all my personal subjective interpretations that I don't need to share with anyone, and then going out of it in a very smooth and again sensitive way. So this is the care, and this is the connection to the others for me. I don't know what to expect. Of course, it's all about me because I'm staying there, people are watching me. But it's not only about me; it's about me being together with these people.
Yeah, but
I want to give Jorgen an opportunity to respond because there's been a lot
I
of.
think I told
Yeah,
everything,
yeah.
you know, because I'm really happy because in this moment I'm doing this performance. Everybody has the right to interpret it and take it in his own reality. I think we have different realities, so she take it to her, and you will take it to yours. I can only tell what I was doing. So I was doing, and what I was is just going, take it physically, going to my border of what I'm able to do with the bell and coming down. That's all. So if you feel it's violent, it's true. For you, it's violent, and it's true. For me, it's just a simple physical thing coming from the silence, starting with hearing, going to the most possible I can physically do, and going back. You know. So of course, it's a possible interpretation to say it's hammering to the other. You know. But it was, of course, not my intention to hammer him. You know, it was just, like I told you, I told everything. I told to Gabe, okay, I was very happy, he's a really good musician, you know. I told him what I was going to do, and I make the bell, and he was very happy with it, because for him, he found that he can do his stuff, I do mine, like I told with Paul, and then it will create a situation. Maybe it's violent, it's true, but violent for me, it's okay, you know? Why not violent? Why not hammering? But I'm not expressing hammering or whatever, but it can happen that you have this impression, yes.
I want to raise a question about responsibility, because you're talking, you know, I'm totally with you on all your sort of philosophical and sort of formal questions, right? You've got a very conscious relationship to yourself as a performer, what you're doing as a performance artist. Well, I find you kind of reluctant to take responsibility for the content of your work, right? Because you know, we use all these words of philosophers or whatever, but actually this work is really strong in saying very specific things. And you cannot deny that. You cannot say this is just like a possibility of reading. It's saying something very specific, sorry, it is. And I would like to see you take responsibility for what you are saying. You know what I mean? I think that's why you get so much discussion around your work.
Yeah.
It's why you get the vote. It's because we want you to take responsibility for what you threw into the world. And I've heard other artists, visual artists, also say there's no moral, right? So I can say whatever I want. I can use prostitutes or children prostitutes or whatever in my work without taking moral responsibility for it. And it's provoking when you're saying so strong political things and denying the responsibility for content and only talking for.
If I could I think it's interesting when we have the experiences, like, watching an interpreter and thinking about the sound, and the different experience I'm having entirely about looking at what sound might mean in a visual sense. I think it's a very sensory experience, but it's very interpreted, and then it's of course interpreted. Right, so the power of a bell, I'm thinking, so what, right? So what? But I think it's also back to collaboration, right? Sound, visual sound for me. We can say it's something is undeniable, except for the power that's there. The result of that, that might be that there's something that people can understand clearly across the board. But my sense then is coming from looking at people's reaction to that. Not having a sense of the bell, so it's a sort of the sound-based. It's a very different experience, a very different sensory experience. Very much for me a visual one, not an auditory one, and so it's interesting to just be watching the strong responses to something that I had an entirely different experience of.
I think that what you've maybe walked into here, and sort of the history that's so at the forefront here in certainly in Canada, and the history of particularly male European sort of dominance of Indigenous people here, so is to come here to not have some sort of awareness at least of how profoundly this can be read visually. And I don't necessarily agree that it was, I didn't read anything with Hamlet, because to be quite honest, there were times and moments, most of it I really, really thoroughly enjoyed. I thought the bell, the sounding of the bell, the drum, it was absolutely a beautiful mix. The movement of your body, ringing the bell was beautiful. Those two things together, isolated the sounds together, even just visually, the two of you as separate beings, but then there's this, what was the interaction though, visually, not just visually, even auditory. I can at certain points, close my eyes and listen, and I hear Gabe's voice, I hear the tiredness. He's wondering when it will end. I don't know if you don't pick up on that, just as a musician, just as a collaborative musician. Or maybe you don't know enough of the sound and the singing of Indigenous music. As someone who does and sings it, I pick up on his tiredness. I pick up on I'm holding this man up until he's done, his clothes die, ringing of the bell, And then how he has to go on. And I'm sure for him it was a beautiful experience as well. But you're also inviting someone in who's not likely coming from a much more critically engaged sort of practice to, although certainly in our own communities and Indigenous peoples, we've had these conversations a lot of the time. There's a real awareness and a history of being very generous, and we will give, and we will continue, to indulge.
I think I have to think a lot of what you have told me today.
Eyes kept looking over you.
Yeah.
You had your eyes closed.
No. I look.
Could see, like,
yeah. Okay.
when's he ending?
Okay. I think. I spoke with Gabe before. I spoke with him. I think you can be because he's doing the singing for hours. He can go on with the singing because normally he told me about his powwow. Sure. They go for hours. With like. Yeah. But for me it's very interesting. I have to think a lot of what was going on today, because this affects for me, and I'm not clear, but I have to think about it affects the idea of person for me, because the idea of person is one of the interesting thing in performance art. What means person? Because person is of course the body, but it's a socialized body. So when I come, of course I bring all my culture with me. That's in fact the thing, and the theme of performance art is the person. And when I told, okay, the thing, what is going on in performance art is to show the person, it is of course not the body, because all the person with all his cultural background, his possibilities, his wrong ways, his right ways, everything can be shown and can appear in performance. This is for me what is performance art. And so what more, I think, now I have to think about it, what more can I do to come as this European person and tell to Gabe, okay, that's you, and maybe this violent person, that's me. Maybe you're absolutely right. This culture is a violent one. I was not, it's me with this spell. So, and what more can I do to tell, okay, let's share this space and time. You go your way, I go mine, and then we will see what is the possibility, And even you can, okay, comes back to these shit things of domination and everything. Maybe yes. Maybe this is the image we created yesterday. Maybe yes.
And there's no problem with that. There's no problem with that.
What?
There is no problem with creating that image. It's just about consciousness of the creation of that image. Is what we are saying.
I think that the interpretation is a secondary thing. And it's interesting just with taking responsibility, because of course you are probably aware of at least a few interpretations that the general audience may have, but I think it's a secondary thing. Because what I see and what I hear, that is what it is. And if we have like 100 people and they all see it in a different way, that can be an enrichment, but it can bring something that you see also a little bit further away from you. And once again, I think it's a secondary thing. And I don't think that at all times you can take responsibility for the interpretation of a third.
But I think the question about responsibility also is interesting too. And
I actually want to spend some time talking with the other artists as well, and maybe even if they can speak to responsibility that they feel towards the audience as performers, but also in terms of, I mean, the topic of awareness has come up, and I'm interested in specifically when you're moving to a community that is foreign to you, how you approach that, or if there have been instances where you've realized, just like this conversation has illuminated that something that you planned was interpreted in a way that was surprising to you.
Well, I just recently, this conversation and the question related to research, I think being prepared, and feeling like you've gone ahead and you've sort of done something and you've done your piece, and then later the interpretation, now is a part of history that you sort of hadn't anticipated. So it's almost like research in the post setting. You reflect on the piece and consider outcomes, unexpected outcomes, as you consider that piece. What are the cultural issues? What were some of the, what presented itself perhaps that was unanticipated? So I think the research can be post-performance in the sense of you're still discovering it, you're still trying to understand it, and that might be a better mindset than I think as well. not having expectations around what will happen, but you do have some anticipation around maybe a reaction, not what the reaction will be, but you anticipate a reaction from the audience, and then you hope that the feedback loop, you take that reaction and you move forward in the piece and what happens to it down the road.
Was there have you had a specific experience where that was the case for you? Where there was a difference in what you were potentially trying to convey, especially because I think, Yolanta, you're working with language, which is, just like image, very open to interpretation and misinterpretation.
Because my language is there, again, not the use of language, specifically like American Sign Language or English, it's more the theme of language as the topic, not, again, language art. So I do use a dictionary in some of my work, and I rip pages out of it. I do a fair amount of damage on that. I also use rope and tie it in certain knots around words and thoughts of language, and so again, there's a plan. So I have the dictionary ripped up, and I have the rope laid in a certain way. I have the charcoal pieces that are burned of the book, so I have all these. Then I've used the charcoal that the paper's burned to write and make words. So again, there's a plan to that. There's burnt books, burnt words from a dictionary, the charcoal's writing, so it's got a plan to it, and yet it's not to say I can plan what it's going to be, at the same time. So again, I think, looking at a metaphor, looking at intended meaning, looking at unintended meaning, certainly up to the audience to participate in the art in whichever way they see fit, that is not a part of the plan.
And I want to ask Kaori as well. I want to ask the same of Kaori, and especially because there's a consideration of the political so much in her work. If there's a specific example she can remember where there was a reaction that surprised her from the audience to the work, if it resonated in a certain way that she wasn't expecting.
Um, 私がなんていうかな、女性であることで、日本人であること、それからアジアの中の日本の女性であること。
I'm a woman. I'm Japanese. I'm a Japanese woman in Asia.
で、それでそういう自分が例えばアジアの、例えば日本軍が侵略していたアジアの国へ招待されてパフォーマンスする時のその作品の作り方というのはどうしてもやっぱりセンシティブにならざるを得ないです。
So when I'm invited to festivals, performance festivals in Asian countries where Japanese army used to invade in the past, I will need to be very careful what kind of performance and messages I will bring with my piece.
Careful って言うとちょっと違う。
So it's not careful, sorry.
Yeah, must be careful, but the sensitive. I want to my the mental situation really sensitive before going to there. それでだから私がパフォーマンスを始めてそんなに長くないんですけれども。
I haven't been performing for too long time.
で最初の何年かっていうのはもうそのことばかり気になってた。
The first few years, I have only thought about those issues.
で私が日本人であり日本人の女性であり、そしてその私がそこへ行ってパフォーマンスをするという時に何を表現したらいいのかな、どんな風にみんなが撮るのかということについてすごくちょっと。
As a Japanese woman, as a woman of Japan, used to invade Asian countries. When I'm performing in Asian countries, I thought of how the audience would interpret my pieces, and I thought about it most of the time.
でも今 違うんですよ。
Oh, now it's different.
っていうのは私がパフォーマンスをすることによってそこに自分の体を運んでいってそしてフェスティバルとかいろんな日常、そこに時間をその観客だったりあるいはたまたまそこに行く途中で出会った人とか食事の時に一緒だった人とこうコミュニケーションしていくうちにそんなになんていうかな意識しすぎなくていいっていうことが分かったナチュラルな自然なままでいればいいっていうことが分かった
As I've experienced more opportunities performing, by being there myself, communicating with local people and having dinner, talking, I started realizing that I didn't need to be that conscious about the social.
have to be conscious but it's okay the more natural
I could be more natural.
でなんていうかなつまり一人の人間としてそれは誰かの足を踏むこともあれば踏まれることもあるという
As an individual, I can step on somebody's foot, but somebody can step on my foot as well.
だから例えば戦争っていう一つの動かしがたい事実があったとして
War is the distinct fact, a concrete reality.
でこれは殺し合いをするわけですからどちらが加害者か被害者か結局勝った負けたっていうのはあるんだけどどちらが加害者か被害者かっていうのは分からない部分っていうのもあると思う
In war, people kill each other, so one cannot define which side is aggressor or victim until they have the winning country or losing country. So there's a possibility of being both.
例えば日本で言えば広島のことについて言う時っていうのは私たちはアタックされたってなるけれどもアジアの方ではどうだったのか例えばカンチャノブリのその方では例えば欧米の人たちにソルジャーに対してもひどいことをしているわけですから
When I talk about Japanese war during the World War II, we talk about Hiroshima being bombed, and we talk about being victimized. But then in Asia,
例えばアジアの国そこはいいや例えばいろんなところで例えばなんだろう
in Asian countries, when Japan invaded, there are some camps and there are some prisoners.
Maybe including Canadian
including maybe Canadian soldiers. We used to do some harmful things to them too.
そしてなんていうかなもし私がアメリカに USA に行ってやるとするとやっぱりそのことをどうしても考えてしまうかもしれない。
So when I perform in the States, then I may think about it subconsciously.
でも今はなんていうんだろうナチュラルな自分のナチュラルなままでいいっていうことなんていうんだろうそのリサーチが強すぎる必要はないっていうか。
Now I think that my research should not overpower my natural instinct.
で私がここに存在するっていうことですでにここにバックグラウンドがあるんですよ。私が1959年に生まれて教育を受けて親の世代おじいさんおばあさんの世代は戦争を知っていて親の世代は高度経済成長を知っていて私はその子供であってでそういう意味でいろんなことを自分の肌で感じている一人の人間としてそこに行く。
Well, I was born in 1959, and my presence at wherever I perform, all these background context is already there.
Okay. You first and then Tanya?
For me, where I put myself, yes, for reality putting me in the performance was on the side of Guy.
The side of the?
on the same. I mean, it's life put us in your performance.
Yeah.
And where I was sitting, it was a guy, fucking drum. Gabriel. Okay, Gabriel. It was his fucking drum that made me not hear the sound of that beautiful clock, you know. And it's also important where we put ourselves in this discussion. Where were you sitting? I saw Stein, for instance. He was on the other side of Jürgen. Probably, I mean, it's also how we position ourselves in our mind and what position you want to have. I understand exactly what you're saying. It's really interesting to listen to this. But for me, I was angry at the game because he was handling so fucking much that I didn't hear the subtle sound from Jürgen's.
Oh, thank you.
So I think it's important where reality puts you also. I mean.
Tanya, and then.
Well, I like work that makes me be in that position.
私はなんか自分がそういうポ
For
ジション
me,
にいさせてくれるパフ
the
ォーマンスが好
important
き
thing
です。
is to be, I like the provocation. The important thing is not to be disrespectful. So I think that it's important for us to keep questioning the sins of our fathers, the sins of our mothers, our sin, you know, like sins. For me, I love art that makes me question. Whatever, question, just question. I like the questions. I don't think anybody was posing answers. No one is saying, it's not dogma, it's not propaganda, it's just making questions. I think that's a good thing.
There's something to be said that connects both what the panel are saying as a whole, and I think the comments from here, but this question of responsibility, I think that maybe the friction in the middle here has to do with how an artist can adopt responsibility, but not guilt for interpretation. Because I think responsibility is important, but it's difficult where the line is. It's difficult, you know, if my interpretation of his performance is like this personal, something from my childhood that is completely unique, how can he be guilty for that, for invoking that in me? But he also, you have to be responsible as an artist for invoking, period. And I don't know where that line is, but I feel that needs to be said, and that I think maybe we're all there. Maybe not. Well, I don't know.
I don't really understand what you mean.
I mean, so I agree with you that, to some extent, that the interpretation is secondary because every single person's interpretation is so uniquely of them that I don't feel, I would never assume to possibly know what I would bring forth in view through my actions. But I also feel the need to take responsibility for my actions, but not a guilt for what I bring, you know? And I'm not sure where that line is.
Yeah, I think right.
So I think that it's true of both, not that you guys are saying opposite things, I think they're both true, but maybe the question is where that line is and how that's even possible to adopt that.
And even though I think interpretation is, I think, a secondary thing, it is very, I don't say it's not important, because it's very, it can make or break. But,
well, maybe it is the piece.
But what you see is the most, and in the case of Jürgen's work, I think, how to say, visually for me it was not interesting enough. I see also this, it's very self-centered what he did. I think that's what we kind of came to the thing, and maybe that's not good, or that's not bad, but it has to do with timing maybe, and then how he reads the environment with the performance. Many people say he closes his eyes, I did see that from time to time he is like peeking through. But I think that Gabriel was in my opinion, so that's just doesn't mean anything, but was much better reading the situation, and I don't know who said what was like trying to keep Jürgen up, and that is maybe again an interpretation, that. It's a secondary thing.
Yeah, but that is thing, and I agree with you. But I also don't feel, You know, this. It's not a finger pointing. It's like
No, I
don't sense that anybody's being finger pointing.
no. But that is the question of how to adopt a responsibility. I don't know.
Have we time to go back to the question of responsibility, or
We have 10 minutes.
We have 10 minutes.
We need 1 hour.
Is that the pressing question? We can talk about responsibility. I was interested in you mentioning that it's all about what we see, because there are also elements in all of their work that isn't necessarily about what's being seen, but what's being physically experienced and what's being heard, and that's a whole other question too. But I'm happy to. Did you have something specific you wanted to ask about? And you have a question too,
Or a comment at least.
or a comment? Okay, so responsibility, and then.
Well, when you were talking about responsibility, I guess my sense is when we look at the artist and wanting to perhaps send a message, but it's indirect in the sense that the audience is gleaning from that message. So our responsibility perhaps is to send a message. My values, my culture, my information is in the message as it's sent, but it is not a part of how the message is received. So I'm not responsible for the receiving of the message. I'm not responsible for what comes when you get it. I am just responsible for its intention upon being sent. That's what I would say.
Lydia, I feel that after Robin spoke that there was something that was addressed that. So I feel like we made some progress in the discussion and what the point was that was being made. So
You didn't get it.
No.
What I was saying is that the question of responsibility, it's different in terms of the work itself, right? And the considerations that you make when you make the work. And then because now we're in a situation where you're talking about the work, right? In the panel.
Yes.
So, and that's a different scenario.
Yes.
So how are you presenting it to us?
Yes.
In terms of process and thinking and consideration, like Odin was talking about, and cultural consideration.
And what can I say?
No, you don't have to say it.
she was clarifying what she was saying. She was clarifying what she was saying.
Because what Tanya was saying, it's quite important. It's evoking things, and that's really interesting, right? But then, how do you relate to that when you have a conversation?
For me, really, it's very interesting. I have to think about that. But I told already, it's a question for me of the person. So, and the other thing. So I don't want to be disrespectful. It's really, for me, one interesting point. If I see performance, and I'm doing performance. For me, really, it's the same thing. When I'm looking to performance, I learn. I'm exchanging nearly the same way I'm doing. And what I'm doing is always when I'm sitting there, I'm very careful how this performance comes to me, because it will tell me such a lot about myself. So if I'm listening to you, for me it's so interesting because you are speaking about yourself, not so much about the performance. And so for me it's really interesting, that point. So I'm happy, of course, that this performance evolved so much, whatever is going on. So I understand that a lot of the situation through your, how it comes to you, how it affects you or not. This is what I learned. People speaking about performance mostly speak about themselves. And that's a very good thing,
But why I bring it back to responsibility, and what Agnes was saying, and also what Tanya is, that if we are going to create work that is about speaking about what it means to be an individual, then we have a responsibility within our discussions about our processes to try to be as conscious about the layers that it invokes.
But it's so culturally related that we cannot be prepared for that.
Yes, responsibility just sounds way too judgmental.
Responsibility, but
Responsibility, I don't know what the right word is, but how about not responsibility? That sounds like your mother saying, you have to take responsibility for your actions. I mean, and I agree with you, but I think that when people are trying to be provocative in an engaging way, then yes, they need to take responsibility. But how about finding another word, such as?
No, hold on. Wait till I finish.
And we do need to wrap up. So I don't.
I don't know what the word is, but it's like change it. But it's how do we discuss it in relation to other subject areas who are also addressing the same thing about individuality or what it means. That was my thing. It's like we always we're fighting for our own funding and our own positions all the time within our countries, and people ask us, oh, so what does the performing arts have to do to give us? What does it have to give us? It has to give us this richness. This is what it is. This discussion, and that is why responsibility. I don't want to use that word. This is what it allows for. And
there's another one that suggests to be answerable instead of responsible.
What?
Answerable.
Could opportunity be a word rather than responsibility to it? You have the opportunity to? No, Paul's saying, not at all. I'm trying to be a little more less confrontational. Consider it. I'm wondering if anyone else in the group has any last remarks.
Only one thing. I really, of course, I really like this discussion because now it directly gives us a platform for the next question. What is the next 10 hours? Is about quality of performance art. We always avoid this question, but I'm really interested because there is no answer, But exactly this question of responsibility, of different approaches, of everything could, and so I'm very happy, I have a lot to think about, could lead us directly there. You know what I mean? What is the potential of this art form? I think we just reached there to go further in this question.
Thank you. There's another performance art daily tomorrow, so hopefully everyone will come back. Hosted by Tanya. So.
What?
What?
It's gonna be way more lame than this. Way more laid back.
Thank you so much for coming. Thank you to the artists and everyone in the room for being so open with the dialogue. Thank you so much.
Thank you, everyone. And I just also wanted to acknowledge the Gendai Foundation for providing interpretation for Gendai, G-E-N-D-A-I Foundation, for providing interpretation from Japanese. And of course, a special thanks to our interpreters today.